Welcome to another episode of Stack of Stats. Today, I am so dang excited to have somebody who I'm a huge big fan of, and it is Bobby Stroupe. He is the founder and president of APEC, the Athlete Performance Enhancement Center. And what does he do? He builds athletes from the ground up, from youth to collegiate sports to eventually the pro leagues. Him and his team support over 100 athletes in the NFL and the MLB. And one of those athletes, maybe you might have heard of him as Mr. Patrick Mahomes, but my man, Bobby, I am absolutely fascinated with your work, what you do. And so really, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
It's always an honor to come on and talk with other professionals. And obviously you have done some great things and you have got a great following and show, and excited to chop it up with you. So let's dig in.
Of course. And the draft is this week. What else have you been doing? But what has your schedule like been during these last few months? I mean, from end of the football season leading up to now, just like how busy are you?
I've got a lot of hats. Apparently I'm a businessman. That was by accident. And I'm also a concierge personal coach. And then I'm a coach and educator within my business. And then I try to be a dad and a husband when I can. So there's a lot been going on. I do some consulting with some teams. So there's been some involvement in preparation for the draft there. And then of course we've got some special projects with some athletes that are recovering from the season, of course. And draft prep. So we don't do it. We're not big into the draft preparation. We only took 12 guys this year. We normally take about 35. This year we took 12. But we feel like we have a really good class, and we're excited for those young men to really have their lives change in the next few days.
So. Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to get into that, but I do want to get the easy stuff out of the way first. And that's, of course, your relationship with Mr. Patrick Mahomes. Sorting through your Instagram timeline, the first post that you made of him was back in May 2014. But I actually heard that you've been with the kid for since elementary or something like that.
Is that that's crazy that may have, okay. So 2014 on social media, but if you go back and look on Facebook, which I think I've been maxed on Facebook for a long time, but yeah, I've been working with Patrick since he was in 4th grade. I don't take personal training clients, and I really don't work with kids one-on-one. I don't feel like they need one-on-one instruction. And so when he was young, he worked in our groups, and we have a pretty broad scope development plan when it comes to developing athletes. Mm-hmm. And he was in our groups. And while he was there, I don't try to put these kids on any type of pedestal or post about them if I can keep from it, because I want them to reach as high as they can. And I don't want to put a kid out on Front Street, especially for a business and the NCAA type situations. But yeah, he was around. And the first time we probably did any type of one-on-one work was right before he left to go to Texas Tech. And then when he would come back in his small breaks, whether it be Christmas break if they didn't make a bowl game, or in that short break in the summer as well. And I had a good relationship with his coaches. We got in a lot of quality work then, but we've spent the majority of our time together since he's been a pro. And it's crazy. Yeah. He's going into his 5th season, and that blows my mind. But it's been an awesome journey, and to see him grow and improve. I think people think he was just this gifted guy, but he's worked hard. Right. He's worked hard, and he deserves a lot of respect for the work he's put in and the self-reflection he's had.
Absolutely. And that May 2014 post was when he won the National Player of the Year award. And of course, you're still working with him now. He's having all the accolades in the NFL. But of course, we also know that Mahomes suffered from the turf toe injury late in the season. I heard a podcast with you that there was a running joke that you are the one who broke Mahomes. And why would some think that? And I think it's because you actually do a form of foot training. And that's where you kind of like mix the upper body training with the foot, and you have formed a relationship between the two somehow. But can you explain what that is? Because I think it extends beyond more than the NFL, but it's actually something that us as athletes, if you're doing any type of athletic anything, whether you're playing tennis or playing golf or playing like me, I'm just a bodybuilder, like what's the most important part of our body? The foot. And probably it's not getting enough attention. So can you explain that, what you mean about the foot training?
Right. So everything starts in the foot. If you're playing a sport in which you're standing upright, I mean, that's just the bottom line. If you're swimming, it's a different ball game. And some other types of sports, if you're riding on a horse or something like that, they could be different. But if you're playing on ground and you're standing up on your feet, every power transformational zone that there is going to begin with the power converter of the foot. And what's funny is I a lot of people will attack me. The way that it works is if your athletes do really good, well, they're obviously just very gifted and talented, and you just are kind of lucky. But if anything happens, then you mess them up. So that's just the way it works. And to be honest, we're not in the arena, so they deserve the credit. Now, I don't feel like we deserve the blame. They deserve the blame for injuries as much as anyone else. But at the same time, this wasn't a nutrition injury. The surgeon and myself and Patrick and his team had thorough discussions, and what happened was a little bit different than what was depicted to the media. Without getting into that too much, there was a contact injury off camera that led to other issues that were severe, that led to systematic issues that were there. And this all happened in the matter of a quarter. And then you're talking about a guy that played on this for 5 weeks in the Super Bowl and actually played pretty well. But back to the foot, look, there's 26 bones in the foot, and it's the ultimate chain reaction biomechanical process as far as how your foot hits the ground, how it interacts with the ground. if your talus can move, so if your subtalar joint is functional, and what that does to the rotation of the tibia, if any of those things are out of whack, it's paramount what happens, because the pressure and the type of movement that you have to have in the knee and the hip and everything above that in your chain is going to be affected. And that's where people come up with signature movement patterns, and some for good, some for bad. So in the case of Patrick or anyone else, sometimes people have history. It would not take anyone it wouldn't take anyone to do extensive research to find his history of when he was in high school and when he was a young kid. And also, if you look at his anatomical setup, it's not like what you would pick on a video game. He's got to work to stay correct biomechanically. And we've always known this. He's got a history of things with his feet and ankles. So if you were to pick a weak link, these are things we got to stay on top of.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that is just one aspect of the game that people don't really pay attention to. Like, it's a quarterback, so you're thinking, let me get flexibility with my torso, let me get the ball downfield, but you're not at all thinking about, I got to work on my feet. And that's just the things that people, as me, like the general public of somebody watching football, doesn't necessarily pay attention to. But of course, Mahomes is just one player, but you have worked with so many others, and you just mentioned that you had 12 for the NFL draft, but that's what I'm interested in getting to understand, kind of the pathway to becoming pro ready. So you said that you work with athletes starting from when they were youth, and maybe you're not doing one-on-one, but they are doing group form. At what point, or how do you separate something like sports is just fun to, well, now you have the talent at such an early age, let's see how we can develop this?
I think that's a phenomenal question, and that's one that's very difficult, excuse me, for parents and coaches. And I think that I think the short answer is you never stop having fun. I mean, we want to gamify training as much as we can. We want to have fun. Now, there's got to be the work. And I think the art of being a great coach is finding that balance to where your athletes love the work, but they're getting the highest level of work. You don't have to entice them by it being easy, and you can't create some environment that is just for children. You can still have healthy boundaries and build strong, responsible, and resourceful young men with still having the element and culture of fun. So, as far as when to turn that switch on, I don't ever want that switch turned on, to be honest with you. They shouldn't feel like everything is so crucial. They need to have the same approach to the details in their workouts as they do on the field. And that's where you start to have an athlete mature, because most of these guys love to do what they're really good at.
Right.
And most of us are no exception to that, right? So in what we do in our own lives. But when you take an athlete and you take them off the field, let's say it's a quarterback, you take them off the field where they love to throw and they love to scramble, they love to do their drops and throw route combos and things like that. And then you put them under some type of lift where they're not even in the top, 50% in the group. I think it takes a special coach to build the type of really focus that you need for them to improve under those situations. And the more talented the athlete is, the harder it is to connect with them and why it is they should be proficient in those movements. And so I think that therein lies the challenge, is that a lot of people know a lot of cool things that you can do to help athletes, but there's not a lot of people that understand how to get the athletes to do what it is that they need to do, and do it with such an attitude that's sustainable, number one, and has a pattern of improvement, number two.
Yeah. And that's what you see kind of in tennis right now. Like I know you're in football, but you see that in tennis where right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of the players are struggling mentally. And in turn, they're resulting in struggling physically. And it's because they don't have fans in the stands. They're traveling so much. And so they kind of lost that fire to want to do the sport anymore. The thing that they grew up loving, the thing that they've been a pro at since 17, 18, 19. Well, maybe they need like the support, an extra support, whether it's their coach, whether it's their family member. Perhaps they're lacking some type of support to say like, no, like we're still in this, the pandemic is, we're gonna turn a leaf, it's going to get better. But I think that's kind of like the difference right now between somebody like you and then a sport like or a sport like football, where it is like a collective team unit, and something where it's like tennis, where it's just like it's you, yourself, and I. Like tennis can be a very lonely sport, and so I think that's got a huge difference that I'm seeing in just the ATP and the WTA right now, is that mental strength of trying to keep that love and passion that you had all along and still continuing it on into your profession. But of course, like essentially, you are a strength and conditioning coach, but I did also read that you don't like to be referred to as a strength and conditioning coach. Can you explain why?
Well, first off, that's a keen observation for you on the tennis side. I think in individual sports and track and field would fall into that category. It takes a special personality, a special coach, and a special type of athlete to persevere in those situations. And the pandemic has made it difficult.
Yeah.
To answer your next question, strength conditioning coach, I feel like is a very limiting term. I feel like I feel like it puts us in a box as far as what we can affect. And if you only want to grade my impact on if I improve an athlete's strength or conditioning, I don't think that's fair, because I think that in the world of human performance, whether you want to call me a trainer, I'm just a coach. But if you want to call me a trainer, a coach, a therapist, whatever you want, I mean, there's so many different attributes of strength. Mel Siff, when he originally laid out strength, there was 8 core tenets of that. It's not just weightlifting. It's not just can you endure an 800-meter run. It's, I mean, the mental and spiritual side of it, the emotional side of it, resiliency, obviously mobility, flexibility, stability, all these different things that go into performance. There's thousands of them. But when you peg me, and I'm of the least, when you peg some of these people that have had profound impact on sports, forget teams, on the sports in totality, and you act like that they're a strength and conditioning coach. I feel like on the highest level in our profession, we're only second to the head coach of the team, in my opinion, on impact on the team. Now, on the lowest of levels, all we affect is strength and conditioning. And there are people in this profession that's literally all they can affect. Right. And there are people that I think are rival the impact of their head coach, and they should be treated as such, and they should be paid as such. And that's my standpoint, or that's how I feel. And I feel like there's people that are athletic trainers. There are people that are physical therapists. There are people that are S&C coaches, whatever you want to call them, that all have the ability to rise up and be that person. And I don't think it should be limited to one educational track necessarily. But I do feel strongly about that. I appreciate you researching that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're just like a general support. Like you said, you can do just what you were hired to do, strength and condition, or you can kind of like intertwine all of these things around. And I think that goes into my next thing is I know that you're very much into like a holistic training. So you mentioned it earlier, mental and spiritual. Can you break down what that means and how somebody like even me can utilize a holistic training in an everyday routine?
Yeah, I think just being intentional about the environment that you create and allow probably being the most key part of that around you. And I believe in ethos strongly, and that's a characteristic spirit of culture that surrounds you. So that involves the places that you go, the music you listen to, the comments you allow. If you allow negative people to speak to you on the phone, be around you. Some of the highest level athletes that I'm around, if we're just eating, sitting there, and there's someone complaining about something that's close enough we can hear, they'll get up and leave. Like they're that sensitive to the culture of the things that are around them. And I think those things are underrated and understated. And I think that part is important. Now, spirituality from a standpoint of I'm nobody's preacher. I'm not, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, what is guiding you right now? Are you aware of the subliminal things that are guiding your energy and your thoughts? And you have finite energy, and where's that going right now? Because if you've got stressors that you're allowing because you feel obligated, you just don't. And I talk to athletes all the time of, here's the things you're not responsible for, X, Y, and Z with people outside of yourself. And they'll, well, I have to take care of these people. Okay, well, what's the best way to take care of them? To listen to them complain on the phone all the time, or have to be privy to you always seeing them just be a walking disaster, or you going and reaching your highest level of potential and actually having the power to make an impact on them because of that. And in doing so, you've got to remove them from your everyday conversations and from your everyday type of just cycle of being around them. Maybe it's time to remove them for their own good. So those are the types of things that I really focus on with them, is trying to reflect and give them some questions where they can basically find out, an audit, self-audit, and just say, okay, here are the things that are important. And I think that with relationships, it's so key, if they have a spouse or fiance or girlfriend, that person, for a professional athlete in particular, that person needs to be someone that doesn't baby them, but helps them be the best version of themselves and offsets them, that fills in some of their weaknesses and really fights for them in the areas that they don't feel comfortable. And I can't tell you how important I think that is.
Especially in a year of 2020 that we just had, and it was their first season where they didn't have fans in the stands, where travel just like became a little bit harder because now you have to go through those protocols that you didn't have the season prior. I mean, there's just so much changes in 2020. So like, yeah, you're looking for good vibes. You're eliminating all that which does not serve you. I mean, I talk about on my Twitter account, like, especially like, I'm obsessed with tennis. I watch it all the time, but I talk about just like the mental mindset, and especially in something like sports betting. And I also come from poker. So like there's nothing more important in this world than just having like a positive mindset, the mental mindset, having a strong mind to get you like absolutely through anything, especially 2020, especially in sports, especially just like an athlete, like I said, of tennis. Just like, it's just, I talk about the mental strength so often, and it just definitely seems like that's what it is you're trying to like educate onto these players. Is it goes beyond just a paycheck. It goes beyond just like your quarterback, be a quarterback. It's surround yourself with everything that's going to serve you, fulfill you, educate you, help you grow. I love that. So I love that you take the opportunity to instill these onto these athletes. That's something that you don't really hear from coaches all too often. They're coaches. They do what they were hired to do, but you're taking that extra step to take that further, and I can really respect that.
The games that I feel like positivity can have the most effect. Obviously, positivity can change everybody's world. We can literally close our eyes and focus on gratitude for 30 seconds and change our entire outlook of our day anytime that we decide to. That's without question, that's absolutely possible. But think about a sport like golf or baseball, whether you're a pitcher or you're a batter or fielder or whatever. Positivity in those situations can literally change your biochemistry and change your abilities. And we already know that positive thoughts can change your visual cortex in your brain, which basically means you can create an alternate reality that your brain actually believes happened or exists. And that completely changes all your possibilities and limitations for yourself. And I think that positivity has so much depth to it that we can eliminate expectations that are seemingly positive. For instance, let's say you have a baseball player and they're like, I want to try to steal 40 bases and hit 40 home runs. Well, why do you, and I would say something like, well, why do you want to do that? Well, there's been, 12 people do that. Okay. So why is it that you want to do that? And it's because they see an expectation of this is aligned with something great. And I just I'm not a big believer in expectations, because I think they're the sneakiest form of limitations. And while it may seem like a positive thing, I think we got to allow our mind and our positivity to have such depth that we can see a future and see things that are defined by our own rules, by our own objectives. And that's really what I want as a common denominator with my personal athletes, is that they go out and create. and that they don't play by the rules, and that we don't need a model, and that we're going to go out and do things. And we're not doing it to change the game. I feel like the highest level of mastery is figuring out what takes your signature uniqueness and pushes it out to a level that can play this game in the way that only you can. And that's awesome. I know I took positivity and took it on quite a run there, but I feel like there's a lot of depth to that, in my opinion.
No, that definitely is, and that was like beautifully said. I do want to talk about the stages of an athlete, because that's why I wanted to kind of talk to you all along, was because you built an athlete from the ground up, and of course it all starts with the youth. So I think that the misconception is that weight training for youth is taboo. It stunts their growth. It can cause early injury. How do you ease the minds of parents in situations like this, where, well, they're too young to play this, they're too young to lift that, what's the mindset that you're helping them to start a child so early into sports?
I think it's a fantastic question. I mean, we've got to use common sense sometimes. And look, it's just like weighted balls. People come at me with the weighted ball questions so often, and it's a good way to backdoor this weight argument. It's like, look, has anyone ever thrown anything that is waterlogged? Okay, did it hurt your arm? Okay, if you ever helped your father or your mom pick something up, were they different weights? Okay, did it hurt you? People are so bizarre with their train of thought. Like there's all of a sudden there's like this real objective black line, and then when you cross that line, you're hurting your kid. I mean, everybody should be able to know in moderation things are good. I think that you're going to know when your kids are ready for some type of resistance training. And we have a long-term athletic development program that is 4 levels, and it starts with incoming kindergartners.
Wow.
And yeah, and so you track, and it's level 1 is kindergarten through 2nd, level 2 is 3rd through 5th, level 2, yeah, is 3rd through 5th, level 3 and level 4 is middle school, because we know there's differentiating factors when you get into middle school. But think about it. I mean, I have 2 daughters. I had them in gymnastics when they're 3. Is gymnastics a form of resistance training? Or assisted handstands, is that resistance training? Absolutely. Are doing different types of gymnastica type movements, is that a form of resistance training? Yes. Look, if we weren't so domesticated, what would our kids be doing? They would be following their parents and picking up small things. They would be carrying things, helping build things. What is it that people think we are supposed to have been doing when we're small? When you're small, you lift little things, you move your own body. You climb up the tree, you climb down the tree, you climb in the cave, you climb out of the cave. You walk, you swim. What is it that people think that kids can't do? Yeah. And if these things are gradually happening, I think that obviously resistance training is good at a point, because regardless of the implementation, you're teaching inter and intramuscular coordination, which basically means you're teaching the soft tissues to work individually or in concert with other soft tissues. And beyond that, you can teach the human body how to move and create that curiosity that is a healthy thing for these kids. And do I think kids need to be lifting 3 times their body weight when they're 7? No, but look, everybody needs to take it easy with this, acting like there's this big, dark black line right down the middle. And I don't ever want to hear anybody say, okay, resistance training hurts kids, and then you got your kid playing 9 baseball games in one weekend. Like, you don't get to talk to me about that. You know what I mean? So I went on a rant, but hopefully that
was No, not at all. That was good. What training methods then are you using for teenagers to prepare them for collegiate sports?
I think when they're young, we love to, and I'm talking 3rd through 5th grade. When they get into middle school, we will implement dumbbells and barbell training when they get into middle school. Now, I think that can be done earlier. Right. But for our purposes, typically when they're in 3rd through 5th grade, we use implementations like sandbags, PVC pipes, because I'll teach Olympic lifting progressions when they're in 3rd through 5th grade with PVC pipes. Now, you're not going to look at what we're doing and be like, oh, well, they're obviously getting ready for the snatch. But talk about, just doing overhead squats. Okay, can you swing the bar this way? Okay, how many of you can hold it here and press it up? Now let's see if we can split. Gamifying those things and just getting their body ready so that when they are in middle school, if they can handle a bar the correct way, I know they've got a chance of of having a healthy relationship with weightlifting. And we don't get to decide what happens at school. And we are partnering with that, not taking the place of it. Mm-hmm. So if we can help our kids to learn a way to do things where they're in a big group, and some of these PE coaches are challenged with a lot of kids, limited equipment, and it's not their fault. But if we can help these kids learn a more proficient way to move resistance, I think it can help them. Now, as far as our approach when they're in high school, keep in mind that most of our kids are lifting weights at school.
Right.
So when they do come to us, we don't focus as much on the 75% to 100% loads, because that is what they're doing at school. So for us, we do a lot of focus on power output, that 40 to 70% range, the 20 to 40% range, and the 0 to 20% range. And we'll monitor velocity. We will monitor wattage on that and power output. And then we do a lot of 3D movement implementation and flexibility and mobility. And the reason is because if you're at a school, you don't have time to focus on those. And a lot of times you don't have the equipment or technology. So it's a good fit for us for that age group. And it's something that we find if you target it, you can get some adaptation specific to it, because just because you improve strength does not mean that you get power. And that is a huge misnomer, right? So those are one of the things we want to help the kids on when it comes from a standpoint of resistance training.
Right. Like you said, it's supplement. You're having it in addition to, you're not replacing it. So that definitely makes sense. And of course, they're so young. There's still so much room left to grow. What exactly do college coaches look for in teenage athletes when it comes to physique, when it comes to strength, in addition to, of course, their talents?
That's a great question. I think what they look for is, where do these athletes project? And so I think this is where high school parents can get off too, is that, okay, well, I see someone, I watched the game today and the shortstop weighs 214 pounds and he's 6'2". So I need my kid only weighs 170. I need to get him up to 200 pounds. Mm-hmm. Well, a college coach and a professional coach don't really want the kid to weigh what they're going to weigh out when they're a 27-year-old man, when they're 17 or 16 or even 15. And so I think parents get caught up into that. But if you do just a little bit of research on your favorite players and you look at their actual weights when they were 15 and 16, most of these top level athletes, they were light. And it wasn't because they were trying to be, it was because their body was taking its time to make adaptations that were sound to the function of what it is that they do on a high level. And that doesn't mean weights are taboo, because they're not. You need to get strong. You need to get strong. And you need to have marks. Like, every kid in high school should be able to lift 1.5 times their body weight at least to compete in a sport safely with their lower body in that bilateral press. Now that's the bottom, that's the basement. Okay. But I'm talking about just making some objective marks and getting stronger is way more important than saying, I need my kid to weigh 211 pounds, because those things have all been proven wrong at one stop or another, and they will continue to be proven wrong forever, that those things are necessary. And I think once you do make your kid gain weight, the ability to allow your skill to increase at that rate, and even your power and your speed, it's almost impossible. So what you're doing is you're trading the ability for your body to look like it's something that it's not. In fact, going to ever be, if you make that trade. And I've seen that a lot, and it's unfortunate because, I mean, with what you do, it takes such discipline and such time under tension and such focus on building very specific areas of your body, so that in the competition it's recognized for the points and the scoring, right?
Exactly.
As an athlete, it's almost as an athlete that competes in sport, I should say, it's almost the exact opposite, because the physique is going to form around their signature movements and what makes their body unique. Like, you are never going to see a quarterback win a bathing suit contest.
Right.
They're like, go ahead and list the quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that had a six-pack.
Right.
I'll wait. There's just not. And look at pitchers. A lot of pitchers pitch their best in their career when they have more body fat. Go back and look through the course of time. Gladiators, if you go look at hieroglyphics, they were not ripped. They had body fat, because if you get cut, guess what? You don't heal if you have Abercrombie abs. You can't continue to fight if you have no body fat. So it's not that having a great physique is a problem. It's just that if you are in a power repeatability type situation, or you have to absorb force because the contact you get, it is factual. It's objective that you need a certain level of body fat. I don't like for my quarterbacks or pitchers to go below 15% body fat, because I have found correlations with injury risk and injury rates and performance when you go below that I don't want. Now, I'm not saying being lean is a problem, okay? But for some positions in some sports, it can be a detriment to performance. So I think where parents get mixed up is they don't understand the difference between a fitness sport and a competitive power sport as far as what should happen from a preparation and aesthetic look, right? And of course you do, because you study one side of it and then you live in another. And so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. No, and that's interesting that you say that, because I think we always make fun from the outsider. We always make fun of what these people look like with these quarterbacks. Look at Tom Brady at his NFL combine. So now you're actually saying he should be looking that way. That's going to help him. And so I think that's things that we don't ever really think of. And you're just kind of like putting the exclamation point on it. And that's really fascinating, because I definitely would never have thought of that. You're right. You look at quarterbacks, who has the six pack? You'll wait. Like, we're still there. But one thing that I have always wondered going over into college, because that's definitely like my passion, is something that you see absolutely every single season are these college football players in the weight room. Somebody has like 10 plus plates on either side of the bar, and they're just squatting like this exorbitant like amount of weight. And you have teammates all surrounding them, and then they squat for one, and then the cheers erupt and it goes viral and everything goes crazy. But like what I see as like the bodybuilder, that wasn't even like a half squat. Did you even like, I don't see like proper form. I'm just like, what is that? That's definitely like an injury waiting to like happen instead. But like, you see these every year. Like I said, you see them every season. Absolutely. But are these one rep lifts beneficial mid season? I mean, what do you think about videos like this?
Oh, I think there's a lot of different reasons they do this. Look, some of those coaches that are running those situations are in tough positions, because what if their head coach of the department says, hey, we need something to get some attention? And that's the best thing they got. You know, maybe that's the play. Okay. Right. Is it something that I would do in that situation? No, I don't think so. Do I think that that's an appropriate way to show high level human performance? Not really. Do I think a squat is a bad thing to do? No. In fact, I think that players should get strong, and certain positions should have high marks on that. A lot of those lifts, like you said, they wouldn't pass in a powerlifting meet. It would not be something that you would count in your rep schemes to build your body, literally. Right. And it isn't something, quite honestly, as an adult, for me, I would not squat that way. But I think that you got to go back to, why are they doing it? Does this university need attention today? Right. Maybe this player needs a psychological boost. Maybe the team needs something to rally around. You know, I'm not a big proponent of it. I think it makes us look a little bit archaic, and it makes us look like strength conditioning coaches. And I'm not a fan personally. So I'm glad the one thing that is positive is the kids are excited. So there's that. Now, as far as some of the hand clean technique and the power clean techniques and jerks and squats, it's like, I mean, you might have witnessed an injury that went viral, but you just don't know it yet. You know, I think some of that stuff isn't great. But again, I don't judge. I don't comment, because I don't know the why. I don't know the athlete's injury. I don't know what their range of motion was before that video. So maybe that was a huge win. Maybe their technique is 1,000 times better. Maybe that kid's doubled his weight in a whole year. So I try to cheer people on. And then with my own time and my own post, I get to choose. Outside of that, I try not to be combative with people, because I just don't know. I don't know where they're coming from.
No, absolutely. I do want to talk about the NFL draft, since it is coming up, and one player in particular. And we're talking about physique, and we're talking about all these types of things. You've worked with athletes, of course, of all shapes and sizes, abilities. But I want to talk about Alabama's Devonta Smith. Clearly, I mean, there's no doubt about it. He has the talent. He has the talent, of course, after he won the Heisman. He's an exceptional player. He has great hands. He has the speed. He has route running ability. He scored 43 touchdowns in 3 years in the SEC. I mean, that's definitely, has a major achievement there. But he's thin. And this is the NFL. He's 6'2" and 166 pounds. So
Yeah.
just from like a general perspective, I don't know if you train him or anything, work with him, or if you ever have, but I just wanted to get your opinion. Like, I think that's one of like the major talking points heading into the draft is where is he going to be taken, because his weight is 166. So do you think that his athletic ability is going to outweigh his build?
No, I don't. I listen, this kid is a phenomenal football player and people are overthinking it. And if you go back and look at Randy Moss's physique coming out of Marshall, it was very comparable. Randy was taller, but it was the same type of ratio. And you go back and look at that Dallas Cowboys game, his rookie year, he looks like a skeleton out there, and he's 6'4", probably 180 pounds, and he torched those guys. Look, everyone's going to wish they picked this kid. I didn't work with him, so I don't have an agenda, and I'm not biased here. I'm just telling you that this is a phenomenal football player. He has resiliency, and he shows strength and expresses strength on the field. And you don't pick a wide receiver to break 3 tackles anyway. So I think this kid's a phenomenal player, and people are going to look back and think that was stupid. Look, Chris Johnson, when he played for the Titans and had back-to-back 2,000-yard rushing seasons, I know for a fact he weighed 172 on game day. Wow. And that's an NFL running back. An NFL running back that, this kid is a wide receiver. He's going to be fine. In fact, he's going to fluctuate between, 172 and 165. And when he becomes an older man, he's going to be 180 and he's going to be fine because, look, if people go watch the film, I think there's people out there devaluing him because they want him. Right. And I think there's
smoke and mirrors.
And I think there's also probably agents of other receivers that are towards the top that are probably putting some stuff out there because their guy maybe does have that size. And that's the worst thing about this draft is the ugliness that comes out. All these kids are so talented, and I wish that they'd keep some of this personal stuff out of the media and some of these things, but I don't know if Devonta will hear this. I have advocated for him before. I will just say that I don't believe weight is a factor unless you're an interior offensive lineman. And I would love to be convinced different, but I just can't. Over the history of the game, I just can't be. I've seen too many examples of all of it being wrong. You got to remember, 10 years ago, we didn't let quarterbacks in the league that were under 6'2". And now, I don't know what you think of Patrick, but he's only 6'2". I know a lot of there's several Pro Bowl quarterbacks in the league that are 6'1". There are, you go back 10 years ago, you couldn't even get in the league if you were under that. It doesn't matter how good you were, you're going to go undrafted. And that's super unfortunate because these things are all going to be looked back as they were misnomers. They were limited factors that were just not real. And you can look at the running back position. You can look at the wide receiver position. Look at what the kid is doing in Green Bay. He weighs 180 pounds, that running back.
Yeah.
It's just not true. And a lot of these scouts, I'm not trying to be rude. A lot of these scouts haven't coached in the game. And because they haven't coached in the game, they don't know how much these guys actually weigh on game day. And if they do, shame on them. They're not paying attention because this game is changing, and it's changing because people are being open-minded. And that's why they're beating people that are doing old school stuff at really every facet of the game, from scouting to drafting to player development, which is apparently something people don't believe in, which blows my mind. But yeah, to answer your question, this kid's going to be a star. He's going to be a star from day one. And I just think every team will regret not picking him.
Yeah. And like you said, he's going to bulk up to 180. And we've seen an example of that already in 2019. You had Marquise Brown was the first wide receiver of the 2000s to be drafted, weighing less than 170 pounds. He was taken at number 25 by the Ravens, and he finished his rookie season at 157 pounds. But what did he do? He bulked up at 180 for his second year. So, I think we could very much see the same situation here. And it goes on into what you were saying. The game has changed so much. How people used to look at the game and look at the draft prospects, they used to look at numbers and stats and data. And we had players who weighed this much and were this tall. Those are the players that we want. Those are the players that we don't want. Well, instead, Now we are looking into what is your ability? What are we looking for? It's a pass heavy team now. We're moving into more pass heavy offense. And yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think he's going to be an absolute stud, and I can't wait to see him. And then just for reference, the lightest receiver that the Patriots has ever drafted was Braxton Berrios. He weighed 20 pounds more at 184 pounds. So he is definitely on the lighter side compared to other players, but like you said, he has the talent and he's definitely there. So I'm excited for that. But I do want to talk about just quickly here. I want to talk about the different types of training per position. You're talking about these different training spots, offensive linemen, what they need to be bulking up to. What would a wide receiver be doing differently than a running back? They both need to be explosive and dynamic. So does their conditioning kind of cross over?
That's fantastic. I'm impressed with your questions. You've been well prepared. So I think that wide receivers need to do a lot more high velocity training, and they have to spend a lot more time with their feet off the ground because they get up and sprint in an upright position. So there are different types of things that they need to get full range of motion on their hips with. They've got to get more lift. They have to do a lot more work on their hips, and they have to be a lot more focused on vertical power. I think that for running backs, there's a lot more horizontal power as a factor, and great running backs keep their feet down. The reason is because they can redirect, they can have balance when they get contact, and they're stable. If you go back and watch old film of Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith, their feet don't come off the ground more than about 3 inches unless they see a 20-yard gap. And that's the difference. Wide receivers' feet are never low to the ground unless they are finishing a route, and the good ones can pick up and put down and have less repetitions. So while that is different from a movement standpoint, if you look at strength and the type of strength that you need to build around them, I think running backs need a lot more in what I would call the frontal plane. So a lot more carries, a lot more bends, folds, and not necessarily rotations, but frontal plane, just lateral movement, because they're going to get so much contact from their blind sides. And I think that wide receivers just need a whole lot more vertical training.
Vertical.
And you could call them pulls, you could call them pushes, but they just need a lot more integrity going up for the ball. And they need a lot more strength in that type of movement. If you get a running back that's pushed, that is really programmed to come up and have strength going up, I think it's misdirected. Yeah, they need it. You can check that box. But wide receivers wide receivers are similar to training guards in the NBA in that you need to build some high-end speed. You've got to build in quickness. They need a lot of light loads and explosive movements. You need to monitor rapid fire movements and how much power they can produce. And they've got to be strong enough to withstand that. So low repetitions, a lot of heavy weight, but the frequency in which they lift the heavy weight is probably not often. So once a week, they're really, really heavy. Sometimes some of them once every 2 weeks. And those guys got to be able to lift 2 times their body weight to be able to handle the type of power they produce. So it's all over the board with that, but there are subtle differences between the two positions for sure.
Well, I know that you're talking right now about a vertical. Just kind of go into the NFL Combine really quickly. The previous scouting combine vertical jump record was 46 inches. And in March, it was Illinois wide receiver Josh Imatorbhebhe. Hope I didn't drop his name too bad. With the 46 and a half vertical leap. So there's such a deep wide receiver class this year. He's still not expected to go into the first round because just of how the talent that is in that class. Well, from what I've seen in mock drafts, I haven't seen him really too often in the first round. But I know that you've said that the vertical jump is actually not a good marker at the combine. So what do you think is, and what could be used instead?
Well, the vertical jump is a good measurement, but I think that if you really want to understand how to measure their power, you need to figure out a way to monitor how fast they're getting to a certain mark in the vertical jump. The speed in which they can get there is more important than the height that they get to. Right. Because, for instance, in the NBA, the highest vertical jumper doesn't necessarily get the rebound. It's whoever can angulate and accelerate off the ground and get to that point the fastest. So same thing in football. If you really want to measure how explosive the lineman is off the line, then you need to measure how fast they get to 30 inches, not if one player got to 34 or if one got to 32. So, force plate technology combined with some other things can probably get there, but the NFL is pretty rigid on just doing what they've already done.
Right.
Now, on the positive side, I think a lot of this testing, quite honestly, isn't necessary. And the reason is because every major university at this point has GPS, and most people have the technology that if they watch a video now, they can put metrics on players and figure out max speed. They even have some power quotients and some different things to figure out how explosive athletes are. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this testing you don't even need, because if you know a guy runs 21.8 miles an hour as his top speed for the season and his average sprint was 20.2, then what do you need to see him run a 40 for?
Yeah.
Because you can literally go rank the players according to their game speed, which is way more important. And quite honestly, there are teams doing this and they're just keeping their mouth shut. And if you really pay attention in the last 4 years, combine numbers have not counted, because typically these big numbers, like you mentioned, the wide receiver, if you go back to 2008 to 2012, if you do anything like that, you get drafted in the first round regardless.
Right.
Now you go post 2014, some of those guys started going undrafted. I had a defensive end jump 42 inches a couple years ago at the NFL Combine. Went undrafted. If that would have been a few years ago, he'd be gone in the first round, sight unseen. Mm-hmm. And that's because these teams have smartened up. And I know that's weird for me to say, because I'm supposed to be an advocate for this testing, but I'm not. I'm an advocate for helping our athletes play better on the field. I feel like we have value there, so I don't need to overly weight a vertical jump or a 40, because I don't think I'm a strength conditioning coach, and I don't think we are either. So I think there's just a lot of back and forth. But to answer your question, the good teams are, I think, finding ways to weight the right things. Now, I know there was a time where the Seahawks only paid attention to vertical jump, broad jump, and 10. There are other teams that had their own formulas of all they looked at and how they ranked guys. And I respect that. I think that's really cool that they know what they want. But there's another level to it. And I think that you're finding, if you pay attention, there's some teams that are doing it. And I'll keep my mouth shut on who, but there are some teams that are looking at some things differently. I'll just put it that way.
Work smarter, not harder. And so you don't need all these analytics all the time. But I do want to talk about my boy, Sam Ehlinger, Hook'em Horns. I am a Longhorn. I love Sam. I want to see him get drafted. I want to see him succeed. He had a great pro day. I think he definitely showed some side of him that maybe you didn't necessarily see during the season, but he had the top quarterback vertical jump. According to a post that you did, he did a throwing velocity top 5% of the league. That sounds awesome. He had official 20-yard dash was equal to that of a pro running back. So that's good. He had 8 throws of over 50 yards. And plus, I saw the pictures. That boy slimmed down, and he definitely showcased some muscle there. Which team would you like to see him with?
I want to see him with the team that loves him the most.
Oh, man, I love that answer. Yes, it is about the support, and I love that. Oh, that's a good one.
Right. I want to see him go to a team that has a vision for Sam. And if you're a Texas fan and you are of Texas, you know Sam well enough to know a lot of the good traits. Now, absolutely. The reality is that there were some moments, I think, on the football field he'd love to have back. There were some throws that I don't think were to the level that he's capable of if he's physically healthy, or throwing the ball the correct way. And I think Sam's best football was ahead of him. And I don't know that a lot of players can say that coming out of college. And, if I'm also honest, I think the talent level and the organization of the offense at Texas was at an all-time low, possibly in the time that he was there.
Absolutely.
Even during the Charlie Strong era, you had wide receivers that played at a high level. Now, when Sam first got there, he had a lot of help. He did have some good receivers early on. And I'm not trashing the guys he had right now. I'm just talking about sheer production and organization of the offense.
Right.
But it just wasn't a proficient offense in a lot of ways. And a lot of that was not the coach's fault necessarily. I think the guy had 4 offensive coordinators. So what are those guys supposed to do? Come in and change the world when they're being handcuffed by the head coach is not letting them do their job. The head coach is not letting them run the offense that they got hired to come do. And this isn't coming from Sam. You can't get Sam Ehlinger to say a negative thing about anybody. This is all my own observations. So I think Sam in 3 years, I think Sam will be a top 20 quarterback in the league in 3 years. I think he is a 3-year project. I think he agrees on that. I think right now he needs to go somewhere where he can learn from a great quarterback and great coaches, and where he can bring value by being a good person and being studied up and being an asset to the starting quarterback by giving them information in real time and being that professional support that I know he can be because he's an elite professional. And that's just his approach. So do I think he's overhauled his throwing motion completely? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It has his accuracy improved twofold in the time that we've had him. Yes. Is he healed from his injuries? Yes. He had this year when he was playing, he had, I'll just say 4 injuries that would have held anybody out individually, and he played through them. And it wasn't great at times, but you go back and watch the Oklahoma State game when he pieced together some really, really good football at the quarterback position. And then you go back and look at some other games and you're like, well, you can see he's hurting, or he's just, why did he do this? And it's explainable. But it's just, right. It speaks to Sam's character and why he never explained it, because right. he wanted to go win. I think, you know, his draft grade was to be undrafted. You know, there are a couple teams that don't think he's a quarterback, but that's fine, because you know what, there was more than a couple teams that thought Jalen Hurts was a running back even last year on draft day. Right. So, and I've worked with Jalen and Sam, and I can tell you that Sam can play quarterback in this league. He's not a starter right now. But he's going to make an impact in any organization he goes to. And I do feel like in 3 years, he'll be a top 20 quarterback in this league. And I think he's going to have a phenomenal career. And I'm excited to see what happens this week.
Well, you're getting me excited then. And like I heard you say once, I'm attracted to opportunities where I can prove people wrong. And I definitely hope that this is one of them, where Sam Ehlinger in 3 years is doing some magic out in the NFL. I really hope to see that. But we're talking about all this training, but I do think that people don't give enough credit or devote time to mobility and to getting healthy, and to somebody like even Ehlinger, who had a lot of injuries during his time. And then of course you have players like offensive linemen. They don't get enough credit to be their just their sheer size and move as efficiently as they do in order to protect their quarterback. How do you incorporate, this is the most important question of all, because I think this is what people super lack, is how do you incorporate mobility training into your programs? I did see that you do gymnastics with Mahomes, spine training, neuro mapping with Jalen Hurts. So like all of that is really efficient. How do you incorporate that?
I think mobility has got to be something that's fairly seamless. And I think where a lot of people make a mistake is they'll have like a mobility day or a flexibility day. But for us, when you're talking about athletes that need range of motion to express movement, because look, I've had offensive linemen that can't do 10 reps in 225 that start in the NFL. And that's not ideal. I'm not advocating for that. But the reason I bring that up is, obviously, you know, you could walk into Gold's Gym in any city in the United States, and there's literally 5 to 8 people stronger than starting offensive linemen in the NFL at any point in time. So is strength the thing that they have to play in the NFL? No. Is it an asset? Absolutely. If you tell me, like, do you want your offensive lineman strong or weak? I'm going to say strong. That's a no-brainer. But the one thing that you cannot compromise on is they have to have mobility. That's why scouts take offensive linemen. They make them squat down. They want to see them touch their full palms to the ground on the side, behind them, and in front. And if they can't, it's a huge mark against them. Why? Because range of motion and mobility at the offensive line position is way more important than strength. Look at Orlando Brown. Go check his combine statistics, and then go look at what the Chiefs just did to acquire him and how come he was a first-round pick. It's because he's elite at playing the left tackle position. It's not because he's a power lifter. And so that guy's got great mobility. So to answer your question about how I integrate it in, if I've got an athlete, and let's just use the squat because it's basic. Now it's anything but basic in being technically proficient at it. But when you do a squat, what we would do is pair that squat with a mobility exercise immediately after it, so that we don't lose range of motion in the joint, although we've created some type of tension in the joint and with the soft tissues. So we're going to do the lift. We're going to mobilize it. We will neurologically reset and speed the body back up with stability, and then we will go do the lift again. So we create supersets that preserve mobility in the joints and make sure that the body is applying strength to full range of motion and muscles at full length at the same time. Because what I don't want is for the body to walk around in a shortened state from a standpoint of being contracted and being tense. I don't think you can make muscles longer, because I think that your origin and insertion points are predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there are people walked around in a tense state. And the way we like to prevent that is to integrate mobility in every single strength set that we do. Now, I know what the research is out there. I know people are like, well, no. In the journal of this, okay, I know that if you stretch in between sets, you can decrease performance by 15 to 20%. I know that. So when we do these mobilizations, it's active ranges. So it's active movement in these ranges. We do 3D type of stretching, sagittal, frontal, transverse, and it's less than 5-second holds at any in range position. So we're very calculated on it. And we start to realize with some individuals how much they can and can't do with those things before it affects performance. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an indication of how we do it.
No, absolutely. I'm still working on my mobility every day, and I do something similar where I'm doing like a little lunge in between just to kind of like keep the body flowing. But I am still also trying to get a little bit of that stretch in. I do have one final question for you, just because I'm a workout buff. That's what I do. So for any of us who want to pretend like we're big time, is there like a full body workout that we can do at home or out in the field, out at the gym to make us feel like we're training for NFL Sunday? Maybe some like cone drill, I don't know, maybe like a push sled, some agility. Is there anything, a workout, like a full body workout that we can do to make us feel like we're NFL pros?
So I think, all right. So if we want to be NFL pros, I would say do this. Pick something you can throw. I love med ball training. I love granny tosses. I love slams. I love max effort throws forward, rotational throws.
Mm-hmm.
Pair any of those throws with sprints. So for instance,
Mm.
do 3 throws, drop down your stomach, do a sprint, drop down your stomach, do a sprint, and then do a strength exercise. You do 3 to 5 rounds of that, you're going to have an experience that's going to feel like an NFL workout. And I think it'll be a good change up for anybody.
I'm going to do that. I guarantee you that. And then I do have one final question because it is just like eyeing my curiosity. I see your whole little display right behind you. What are those shoes that you got back there?
All right. So I am a bit of a shoe head, and I've got everything back here has a little bit of a story to it. But if you look at this was a gift from my wife. This was actually at the 15-year mark for APEC. She got these custom Chucks for me, and you can't see it, but they're painted with spray paint. So it was a graffiti artist, and it's
So
actually,
fly.
yeah, and it's actually the same graffiti artist that painted our med ball wall for the original APEC. So it's kind of very sentimental, very cool. And then you can see behind Darth Vader and Chewbacca. That's very important too.
But I do definitely appreciate you taking the time for this. This was an hour of awesome information. Like, I definitely feel like I have a better understanding of the player positions of the NFL draft, of the combine, and just love like training in general from youth to older, from to pro athletes. And I'm really excited, man. This was a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate you. And I hope that I want to see Sam. Oh, I want to see Sam so bad do so well.
He's going to do great. And the reason he's going to do great is because he's an exceptional person. And you know what? I don't have any draft picks, so I'm not stressed out because I don't have to decide. If I had draft picks, I'd pick Sam, but I don't. And any team that I've talked to, and I've talked to several at length, there's no team that doesn't think he's going to get drafted. Now, he didn't have a draftable grade coming in, so if he gets drafted in the 5th or 6th, it's a win. Would I be shocked if he got drafted early? I would not. I think if you go back and look at this day last year, a lot of people thought Jalen Hurts would be a 6th-round guy, and he went in the 2nd. I'm not saying Sam's going in the 2nd, but I really would be shocked if he didn't get drafted because I do know some teams that really love what he has to offer and see a lot of value in him. And that's what's important to me, that he goes to one of those places.
Absolutely. Well, Bobby, I definitely appreciate you taking the time. This was awesome. And I definitely appreciate you having you on.
Thank you.
Thanks for another episode of Stack of Sets.